3 weeks before the world collapsed. I started stockpiling food in my apartment. Canned food, water, medical supplies. My friends thought I was paranoid. But the night the power grid failed, and the entire city went dark, I realized something terrifying. The blackout wasn't a disaster. Someone had turned off the power, just to see who would survive. The first sign that the world was ending was the empty shelf where the bottled water used to be. The second was the way the cashier looked at me, like she knew something I didn't. I didn't understand it at the time. Most people didn't. But I do now. And if you're hearing this, it means you survived long enough to wonder how everything fell apart. 3 weeks before the collapse, the news started talking about supply chain disruptions. That was the phrase they used. Not shortages. Not panic. Just disruptions. At first it was small things. Certain medicines were suddenly harder to find. Grocery stores started limiting how many bags of rice or flour people could buy. A few videos appeared online showing cargo ships backed up outside ports. Most people ignored it. I didn't. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe it was instinct. Or maybe it was the fact that I grew up poor. And when you grow up poor, you learn to recognize the early signs of scarcity. The first thing I did was start watching the stores. Every day after work, I stopped by a different supermarket around the city. I wasn't buying much at first. I was observing. The patterns were strange. Canned food was disappearing faster than usual. Batteries were constantly out of stock. Bottled water shelves were never completely full anymore. But the strangest thing? No one was talking about it. The news kept saying everything was fine, which is exactly when I knew something wasn't. I started preparing quietly. Nothing dramatic at first. Just a few extra cans every trip. A few cases of bottled water. Then a little more. Rice, beans, pasta, flour. I bought things people overlooked: salt, cooking oil, powdered milk, vitamins. When the pharmacy still had them, I grabbed painkillers, antibiotics, bandages, and a full first aid kit. My apartment slowly turned into a storage unit. Under the bed, canned food. Closet shelves, water. Kitchen cabinets, packed so tight the doors barely closed. I even bought a small camping stove and several propane canisters. My friends thought I was being ridiculous.
Dude, my coworker Mark laughed one day. You preparing for zombies or something?
I laughed too, but I kept buying supplies, because the warning signs kept getting louder. Gas prices spiked overnight. A trucking strike shut down deliveries to several cities. Power outages began hitting random neighborhoods for hours at a time. Then the riots started. Small ones at first. Mostly protests about shortages and rising prices. But something was different. People were angrier than usual. Desperate. And desperation spreads faster than any virus. 2 weeks later, I made the decision that probably saved my life. I withdrew most of my savings in cash. The bank teller looked irritated when I asked for it.
Is there a problem with your account?
She asked. No, I said. There was a problem with the world. And I was starting to see it. That same day, I went on the biggest supply run of my life. I bought a generator from a hardware store that still had 2 left in stock. I grabbed fuel containers, flashlights, knives, and a heavy-duty crowbar. Then I went to 3 different grocery stores. The last one looked like a hurricane warning had just been issued. People were filling carts with anything they could grab. I watched a woman almost start a fight over a bag of rice. That was when I realized something. The collapse had already started. Most people just hadn't accepted it yet. My apartment building had a rooftop access door that was usually locked. Usually. One night I went up there with tools and quietly reinforced the door from the inside. I stacked spare furniture behind it. Installed a simple latch system. If things went bad in the building, the roof would become my fallback. Then I started building a small emergency shelter up there. Just enough supplies for a few days. Water, food, a sleeping bag, and binoculars. Those binoculars would later show me the exact moment the world broke. The official collapse happened on a Tuesday morning. I remember the day clearly, because everything was normal until it wasn't. I was at home when the power cut out. At first I assumed it was another rolling blackout. Then my phone lost signal. No internet. No cell service. That had never happened before. I went to the window and looked down at the street. Cars were stopped everywhere. Drivers were getting out and looking around like something invisible had just slammed into the city. Then the sirens started. Not 1 or 2. Hundreds. Ambulances, police cars, fire trucks, all heading in different directions. That was when the first helicopter flew overhead, low enough that the windows rattled. Something had happened. Something big. By evening, the city was in chaos. Without power, traffic lights failed. Intersections became gridlocked. Stores closed early. Then the rumors started spreading. Massive cyber attack, grid failure, banking system collapse. No one knew the truth, but people knew enough. They began looting. The grocery store 2 blocks from my apartment was the first target. I watched it from the rooftop. At first it was just a few people smashing the windows. Then dozens rushed inside. Within 30 minutes, the entire place was stripped bare. Police arrived. Too late. That night the city went dark. No streetlights. No traffic lights. Just the occasional glow of fires in the distance. I sat on the rooftop with my supplies beside me and realized something terrifying. Everything I had prepared for was now real. The first week was quiet inside my building. Everyone stayed in their apartments. People rationed food. The water still worked for a while. But hunger changes people quickly. By the second week, tension started rising. Arguments in the hallway. People accusing each other of hoarding supplies. Then one night someone started banging on my door. Hard.
Open up!
A voice shouted.
We know you've been stocking food.
My stomach dropped. They had noticed. Of course they had. Carrying cases of water upstairs every day hadn't exactly been subtle. The banging got louder. There were at least 3 people outside.
Share the food, someone said, or we break the door.
I looked at the crowbar in my hand. Then at the backpack I had prepared weeks earlier. That was when I realized something important. Apartments were traps. If the building turned hostile, there was only one place left to go. The roof. I slipped out through the back stairwell before they broke in. My backpack carried 3 days of food and water. The rooftop shelter had more. When I reached the roof, the city looked like something out of a disaster movie. Fires burned in several neighborhoods. Sirens still echoed somewhere far away. But the strangest thing was the silence between them. No traffic, no music, no voices, just wind. For the first time in my life, the city felt empty, like civilization had quietly stepped away. Days passed. More buildings were abandoned. Occasionally, I saw small groups moving through the streets below, carrying supplies or pushing carts. Some were scavengers. Others looked like refugees. Once, I saw a man get attacked over a backpack. No one helped him. That was when I understood the final rule of the new world. Survival had replaced morality. But the real twist came on the 10th night. I was watching the skyline through the binoculars when I noticed something strange. Lights. Not fires. Actual lights. Far across the city. A cluster of buildings glowing steadily in the distance. Power. Someone still had power. And where there's power, there's organization. Maybe even safety. But getting there would mean crossing miles of ruined streets. Through gangs, scavengers, and whatever else had taken control of the city. I stared at those lights for a long time. Then I slowly began packing my supplies. Because the truth is, stockpiling keeps you alive for a while. But eventually, survival means moving. And tomorrow morning, I'm leaving the roof. I didn't sleep that night. Those lights across the city kept burning in the distance like a signal. Or maybe a trap. Either way, they meant one thing. Someone had control of power. And in a world where everything else had collapsed, power meant structure. Organization. Resources. Maybe even safety. Or maybe armed men guarding the last working generators. Either way, sitting on a rooftop waiting to starve wasn't a strategy. So before sunrise, I made the decision. I was leaving. Packing took less time than I expected. Weeks earlier, I had already organized everything into survival categories. Food, water, tools, medical supplies. I filled my hiking backpack carefully, keeping the weight balanced. 6 cans of food, 2 bags of rice, water purification tablets, a small camping pot, a folding knife, the crowbar, my flashlight and spare batteries, and the most valuable thing in the entire bag, a printed map of the city. Phones were useless now, but paper still worked. The stairwell smelled like mold and garbage. Someone had dumped bags of trash down there days ago when the garbage trucks stopped coming. Halfway down, I heard voices. I froze. Two men were arguing somewhere on the lower floors.
Told you he had food.
Then where the hell did he go?
They were talking about me. I held my breath and waited. Eventually their footsteps moved away. That was the moment I realized something else. The building wasn't just unsafe anymore. It was actively hunting resources. And in this new world, I was a resource. The front entrance of the building had been smashed open days earlier. Glass covered the sidewalk outside. The street looked worse than I imagined. Cars were abandoned everywhere. Some had doors left open. Others had been burned. Trash blew across the pavement in the wind. The entire city felt like it had been evacuated in a hurry. But it hadn't. People were still here. You just didn't see them until they wanted to be seen. I stayed close to the buildings as I moved. Every survival instinct told me the same rule: avoid open spaces. The first store I passed had already been looted. Shelves overturned. Glass broken. Someone had spray-painted a message across the front wall. No food left. A warning to anyone thinking about searching inside. Or maybe a lie to scare others away. I didn't risk it. The first living person I saw was an old man pushing a shopping cart down the street. The cart was filled with random things. Blankets. Plastic containers. 2 stuffed animals tied to the handle. He looked at me once as I walked past. Neither of us spoke. We both understood the rule. Strangers were problems. 2 blocks later, I heard the gunshot. Just one. Sharp. Close. My body dropped behind a parked car before my brain even processed the sound. Voices followed.
Check his pockets. See if he's got food.
I slowly peeked through the car window. 3 men stood in the middle of the street surrounding someone on the ground. One of them kicked the body. Another searched a backpack. Then they dragged the body onto the sidewalk like it was trash. I stayed completely still. Didn't breathe. Didn't move. 5 minutes passed before they walked away. That was when the reality of the new world fully settled into my bones. Out here, food was worth more than human life. I waited another 10 minutes before moving again. This time I took a different route. Smaller streets. Narrow alleys. Places where cars couldn't drive. It slowed me down, but it kept me hidden. By mid-morning I had covered maybe half a mile. Normally that would take 10 minutes. Now it took 3 hours. Because every corner could kill you. Around noon, I found the first unexpected advantage. A sporting goods store. The front door had been smashed open, but surprisingly a lot of things were still inside. Most looters had grabbed the obvious stuff first. Water bottles, energy bars, camping gear. But they had ignored something valuable. Backpacks. Rows of them still hung on the wall. I swapped my bag for a larger hiking pack. Stronger straps. Better weight distribution. Someone had also left behind a box of emergency ration bars. I grabbed 6. High calories. Long shelf life. Perfect survival food. Before leaving, I locked the back door behind me. Not to keep people out, but to slow them down. Every extra minute mattered now. By late afternoon, the streets became more dangerous. More people were moving around. Some traveled in groups. Others pushed carts filled with scavenged supplies. Everyone looked tired, hungry, suspicious. Once I saw 2 teenagers following me from half a block away. I turned a corner and slipped through an alley before they got close. When I looked back, they were gone. Either they lost interest, or they found someone easier to rob. But the real surprise happened near sunset. I reached an overpass overlooking a major highway, and what I saw there stopped me cold. Hundreds of cars, all abandoned. The highway looked like a metal graveyard stretching miles into the distance. People must have tried to escape the city when everything collapsed. But something stopped them. Maybe the fuel ran out. Maybe the roads were blocked. Or maybe something worse waited outside the city. I didn't know. And honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to find out. That night I slept inside a delivery truck I found behind a warehouse. Doors locked. No windows. Safe enough. Before falling asleep, I climbed onto the truck roof to check the horizon. Those lights were still there. Still glowing. Still steady. They were closer now. Maybe 4 miles away. Tomorrow I would find out what they really were. But as I lay there staring at the distant glow, one thought kept circling my mind. What if those lights weren't a safe zone? What if they were the reason the city collapsed in the first place? I woke up before sunrise. Not because I slept well, because something outside the truck made a noise. A metal scrape. Slow. Careful. The kind of sound someone makes when they don't want to be heard. My eyes opened instantly. For a few seconds I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just listened. Another sound. Footsteps. Right outside the truck. Someone was circling it. I quietly slid my hand toward the crowbar beside me. The footsteps stopped. Then a voice whispered.
Check the back.
A second voice answered.
Locked.
My heart began pounding. They knew someone might be inside. I held the crowbar tighter. If they forced the door open, there would be no warning. Just a fight. Seconds passed. Then the first voice spoke again.
Forget it. Plenty of other trucks.
Footsteps slowly faded away. I stayed frozen for another 10 minutes before finally letting myself breathe again. That was the first lesson of traveling alone. Night belonged to hunters. And tonight, I had almost been prey. When the sky began turning gray, I climbed onto the truck roof again. The air was cold and quiet, but the city was already starting to wake up. Small groups moved between buildings. Smoke rose from several streets. Someone had started fires overnight. And far in the distance, the lights were still there. Steady, unflickering. I checked the map again. If I cut through the highway wreckage, I could shorten the distance by nearly a mile. But highways were dangerous. Too open. Too exposed. Still, it might be the fastest way forward. And in this new world, standing still was its own kind of death. By mid-morning, I reached the highway ramp. Up close, the destruction was worse than I imagined. Cars sat bumper to bumper in every lane. Doors hung open. Suitcases lay scattered across the asphalt. People must have abandoned their vehicles in a panic. Some cars still had family photos sitting on dashboards. Others had grocery bags full of food that had long since rotted. The smell of decay drifted through the air. I tried not to think about why. Walking through the wreckage felt like moving through a frozen moment in time. A stroller lay tipped over beside a minivan. A dog leash was tied to a car door handle, still clipped to nothing. And then I saw the first body. Inside a sedan. The driver's head rested against the steering wheel. I didn't stop to look closer. Out here, curiosity was dangerous. Halfway across the highway, I heard something unexpected. An engine. I dropped behind a pickup truck instantly. Engines were rare now. Fuel was too valuable, which meant anyone driving probably had power or weapons. The sound grew louder. Slow. Heavy. Not a normal car engine. I carefully lifted my head to peek. What rolled onto the highway made my stomach twist. A large armored truck. Not military. More like something improvised. Metal plates welded onto the sides. Steel bars covering the windows. 3 men sat on top with rifles. Raiders. They drove slowly between the abandoned cars, scanning the wreckage. Looking for survivors. Or victims. I stayed completely still as the truck approached. The men talked loudly, confident no one would challenge them. One laughed.
City's dry. We should head toward the river tomorrow. Another replied.
After we sweep this highway.
Sweep. That word told me everything. They weren't just passing through. They were hunting. The truck stopped about 20 yards away. One of the men jumped down. He began opening car doors. Searching for supplies. Or people hiding. My grip tightened around the crowbar. If he checked the truck I was behind, there would be nowhere to run. He opened 2 vehicles. Then 3. Then slowly started walking toward me. Every step felt louder than the last. 10 yards away. 8. 5. Then something unexpected happened. A loud crash echoed from the far side of the highway. The raider snapped his head toward the sound.
Hey!
Another voice shouted.
Over here!
All 3 men turned toward the noise. Someone had thrown something from the overpass. The raiders instantly ran back toward their truck. Within seconds, the engine roared to life, and the vehicle sped toward the sound, leaving the highway behind me completely silent again. I stayed hidden for a long time, long enough to make sure they weren't coming back. Then I carefully climbed over the cars toward the overpass. Whoever made that noise had saved my life. But why? When I reached the overpass wall, a small voice whispered from above.
Hey!
I looked up. A kid stared down at me, maybe 12 years old. Dirty face, oversized hoodie, a slingshot in one hand. He grinned.
Told you it would work.
He climbed down the broken guardrail like he'd done it 100 times.
Name's Tyler, he said.
I stared at him. You distracted them?
Yeah.
Why? He shrugged.
Didn't like them.
That answer was both impressive and terrifying. You're alone? I asked. He hesitated, then nodded.
Mostly.
Mostly. Another dangerous word. Kids didn't survive long alone in cities like this. Which meant one of two things. Either he was lying, or he was far more capable than he looked. Tyler pointed toward the glowing skyline in the distance.
You heading there?
I nodded slowly. He grinned again.
Good.
Why?
Because I've been watching it too.
He leaned closer and lowered his voice.
Something weird is happening there at night.
What do you mean? He looked toward the distant lights. Then back at me.
Every night, more lights turn on.
That didn't sound strange. Until he finished the sentence.
And sometimes people scream.
We both stood there silently for a moment. Wind moved through the abandoned highway. Cars creaked softly. The distant glow of electricity pulsed against the clouds. Finally, I asked the obvious question. Why haven't you gone there? Tyler kicked a rock off the overpass.
Because the last group that tried
He looked back at me.
never came back.
Night was only a few hours away, and the lights in the distance had already begun to grow brighter. For the first time since leaving my rooftop shelter, I wondered if I had made the wrong decision. But the real problem wasn't the lights. It was the fact that now, I wasn't traveling alone anymore. And in the new world, trust could get you killed faster than hunger. I didn't plan to travel with a kid. In fact, if the world hadn't ended, I probably wouldn't have trusted a stranger half my age to walk 2 blocks with me. But Tyler didn't ask permission. He just started walking beside me like the decision had already been made.
You move too slow, he said after about 5 minutes.
I glanced at him. You moved too reckless. He grinned.
Works so far.
I couldn't argue with that. After all, he had just saved my life. We left the highway through a narrow service road that ran behind several warehouses. Tyler moved through the area like he knew it well, which meant one thing. He had survived here longer than most. How long have you been on your own? I asked. He shrugged.
Since the 3rd blackout.
I frowned. 3rd?
Yeah, he said casually. The power didn't just go out once.
That stopped me. What do you mean? He kicked a pebble along the pavement as we walked.
First blackout happened almost a month ago. Only lasted a few hours.
I remembered that. Everyone assumed it was just a grid failure.
Second one lasted longer. He continued. Whole neighborhoods went dark.
And the 3rd? Tyler looked up at the sky.
That's the one that never ended.
That changed everything. Until now, I thought the collapse happened suddenly. But if Tyler was right, the blackout had been escalating for weeks, which meant someone had time to prepare, maybe even control it. We reached the edge of a residential neighborhood just as the sun began setting. Most of the houses looked abandoned. Windows boarded, doors broken open, lunds overgrown. But Tyler raised his hand suddenly, signaling me to stop. What? I whispered. He pointed toward a house at the end of the street. Smoke rose slowly from the chimney. Someone was inside. We crouched behind a fence and watched. Minutes passed. Then the front door opened. 2 men stepped outside carrying rifles. They scanned the street carefully. Guards. Not survivors. Guards.
Camp, Tyler whispered.
How many? He shrugged.
Hard to say.
Through the binoculars, I noticed something else. The men weren't wearing random clothes like scavengers. They wore matching jackets. Same color. Same symbol on the sleeve. A white triangle. That symbol made my stomach tighten. Organization. Structure. Authority. Someone was building control here. More people emerged from nearby houses. Some carried buckets of water. Others hauled crates between buildings. No one spoke loudly. Everyone moved with purpose. This wasn't a desperate survivor group. This was a system. Tyler leaned closer.
See the lights.
I followed his gaze. Behind the neighborhood, further into the city, the glowing skyline burned brighter than ever. Electricity. Real electricity. And suddenly the pieces began falling into place. If someone had power, they could run generators, pumps, radios, lights. And if they had those things, they could control everything around them. Food, water, shelter, people. We should leave, I whispered. Tyler didn't move.
They might have food.
They also have guns.
So do we.
Not like them. He finally sighed and nodded.
Fine.
But as we slowly backed away from the fence, a voice suddenly echoed from behind us.
Don't move!
My blood froze. Two figures stepped out of the shadows, both holding rifles, both wearing the same jacket with the white triangle. One of them gestured with the barrel of his gun.
Hands where we can see them.
Tyler raised his hands slowly. I did the same. The second guard walked closer, studying us carefully.
You scavengers?
He asked. No, I said calmly.
Then what are you doing here?
I thought quickly. Passing through. He laughed.
No one just passes through anymore.
That was probably true. He glanced at Tyler.
Kid yours?
No.
Tyler immediately said, "He saved me."
I stared at him. That wasn't exactly accurate. But the guard seemed satisfied with the answer. After a moment, he nodded toward the houses.
Come with us.
That wasn't a request. They escorted us through the neighborhood like prisoners. More guards watched from rooftops. Others stood near barricades built from overturned cars. I counted at least 12 armed men, probably more hidden somewhere. This place wasn't just organized. It was fortified. Inside the largest house, several generators hummed loudly in the basement. The sound vibrated through the floor. Electric lights illuminated the entire room. Actual lights. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't standing in darkness. But something about it felt wrong. Too controlled. Too quiet. A tall man sat behind a table near the center of the room. Everyone else seemed to give him space. Authority radiated off him without effort. The guard spoke first.
Found them near the perimeter.
The man studied us carefully. His eyes settled on Tyler.
Another stray.
Tyler said nothing. Then the man looked at me.
You came from the east side?
I nodded slowly. He leaned back in his chair.
That area is finished.
What do you mean? He folded his hands calmly.
Raiders took most of it last week.
So the armored truck group wasn't the only threat. Good to know. The man continued.
You're lucky you ran into our patrol.
Why? I asked.
Because the city is about to become far more dangerous.
The room went quiet. Even the generators seemed to hum softer. I felt Tyler glance at me beside my shoulder. What do you mean? I asked carefully. The man smiled slightly. Not a friendly smile. More like someone who knew a secret.
Because tonight, he said calmly, the lights are turning on everywhere.
My mind struggled to process that. Everywhere? That's impossible, I said. The grid is dead. He shook his head.
No.
Then he leaned forward slightly.
The grid was never dead.
A cold feeling spread through my chest. Then why shut it down? The man's smile widened.
To flush everyone out.
The generators hummed. The lights flickered slightly overhead. Outside, the night sky slowly darkened over the ruined city. And somewhere far away, more lights began turning on. One by one, like a signal spreading across the horizon. Tyler whispered beside me.
I told you something weird was happening.
But the real problem wasn't the lights. It was the question that suddenly filled my mind. If someone had the power to shut down an entire city, what were they planning to do now that everyone had come out of hiding? And judging by the calm look on the man's face, the worst part of the apocalypse hadn't even started yet. For a few seconds, no one in the room spoke. The tall man's words hung in the air like smoke. The grid was never dead. My brain kept trying to reject the idea. Cities don't just go dark for fun. Power grids don't collapse across entire regions without catastrophic damage. But the man sitting across from me looked too calm, too certain. And worst of all, everyone else in the room already seemed to know. You're saying the blackout was intentional? I asked slowly. The man leaned back in his chair.
That depends on how you define intentional.
Tyler shifted beside me.
You mean someone did this on purpose?
The man finally looked at him.
For a kid, you catch on quickly.
That answer was enough. My stomach tightened. You shut down the power to the entire city? He laughed softly.
Oh no, not me.
Then he gestured upward toward the ceiling.
Something much bigger than this neighborhood.
Outside, a low mechanical hum rolled across the city. It was faint at first, but unmistakable. Tyler looked toward the window.
Generators.
The man shook his head.
No.
He stood and walked toward the window slowly.
Transformers.
I followed his gaze outside. Across the dark skyline, lights were appearing. One block at a time. Streetlights flickered on. Apartment windows glowed. Office buildings lit up like giant lanterns. Electricity was returning to the city. But not randomly. It was spreading. Systematically. Like someone flipping switches on a giant control board. Tyler whispered beside me.
That's impossible.
The man folded his arms.
Not impossible. Scheduled.
Why? I asked. He turned toward me.
Because when the lights return,
He paused.
people come out.
That was when the real meaning hit me. The blackout wasn't just a collapse. It was a trap. For weeks, everyone had been hiding, rationing food, staying inside. But if power suddenly returned, people would leave their shelters, search for supplies, contact family, celebrate survival. They would flood the streets, exactly where someone wanted them. Who's running this? I asked. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he picked up a small handheld radio from the table. The device crackled to life. A calm voice spoke through the speaker.
Zone 4 activation complete.
Another voice followed.
Zone 5 power restoration in progress.
My blood ran cold. They were talking about the city like a testing facility. The man placed the radio down again.
You really want the honest answer?
He asked. Yes. He met my eyes.
No one here knows.
Tyler frowned.
That makes no sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense, the man replied. Orders come through the radios. Power grids activate. Supplies get delivered. And we make sure things stay controlled.
Controlled? I repeated. He nodded.
Someone up there wants the city stable.
And your job is? He smiled slightly.
Population management.
The words landed like a punch. Population management. Not rescue. Not rebuilding. Control. Meaning what? I asked quietly. The man walked toward the door.
Come see.
Outside, the neighborhood looked different now. Lights illuminated the barricades. Generators roared louder. Guards moved through the streets carrying flashlights and rifles. But what caught my attention wasn't the guards. It was the people arriving. Dozens of them. Maybe more. Survivors. Drawn toward the lights like moths. Families. Scavengers. Injured travelers. All slowly approaching the neighborhood. Hope on their faces. Hope that electricity meant safety. Food. Civilization returning. Tyler whispered beside me.
They think it's a shelter.
The man nodded.
They all do.
2 guards stepped forward and stopped the first group. A tired couple and their teenage daughter.
State your supplies, one guard said.
The father looked confused.
We don't have much.
Food?
Almost gone.
Medical supplies?
No.
The guard wrote something on a clipboard, then pointed toward one of the houses.
Stay there tonight.
The family nodded gratefully and walked inside. Another group approached. 3 young men carrying backpacks. The guard asked the same questions. But when they opened their bags, they were full of food, canned goods, water, batteries. The guard's expression changed immediately. He looked toward the tall man. The man gave a small nod. The guards confiscated the bags instantly.
You'll stay here tonight, one of them said. But the supplies are being redistributed.
The men looked angry but didn't argue. They were outnumbered. Tyler leaned toward me.
They're stealing food.
Not stealing, the tall man said calmly behind us. Centralizing.
He pointed toward the survivors being escorted into houses.
Hungry people panic. People with supplies hoard. But when everything flows through one system...
He spread his hands slightly.
Order appears.
And if someone refuses? I asked. The man's eyes drifted toward the edge of the neighborhood. I followed his gaze. 2 guards were escorting a man toward the street. The man shouted angrily.
I'm not giving you anything.
He tried to pull away. One of the guards shoved him forward. Hard. Right past the barricade. Out into the dark street. Then they closed the gate. The man stood there alone for a moment. Confused. Angry. Then distant headlights appeared at the far end of the road. A familiar armored truck rolled slowly toward him. Raiders. The same kind I saw on the highway. Tyler inhaled sharply.
You're feeding them to the raiders.
The tall man didn't look away.
Balance, he said quietly.
The armored truck stopped. The man tried to run. He didn't make it far. The gunshot echoed through the quiet street. Tyler turned his head away. I didn't, because now I understood something horrifying. This wasn't chaos. It was a system. Raiders cleared areas. Survivors were funneled toward controlled zones. Supplies were confiscated. Population reduced. And someone somewhere above all of it was watching. Back inside the building, Tyler spoke first.
You're monsters.
The tall man didn't react.
No, he said calmly. We're employees.
That word felt even worse. Employees. Which meant there was a company, or an organization, or a government, running this entire operation. Why tell us all this? I asked. The man looked at me carefully.
Because you're not like the others.
How do you know?
You traveled across half the city alone, he said. You stock supplies before the collapse. You observe instead of panic.
People like you are valuable. I didn't like where this was going. What are you offering? He smiled.
A job.
Tyler whispered beside me.
Don't.
The man continued.
You help us manage the zone. In return,
he gestured toward the glowing skyline outside.
You live inside the lights.
Food, power, safety, everything people were killing each other for. All offered in one sentence. But something inside me kept replaying the gunshot outside the gate. Population management. Balance. Employees. This wasn't survival. It was control. I looked toward the window again. More survivors were approaching the neighborhood. Drawn by the lights. Drawn by hope. And I realized something that made my chest tighten. If someone was running this operation, then this city might only be the beginning. Because experiments usually don't happen in just one place. Tyler tugged my sleeve quietly.
What are we going to do?
I stared at the glowing skyline, then at the guards, then back at the tall man waiting for my answer. And for the first time since the world collapsed, I realized the real choice wasn't survival anymore. It was whether I was willing to become part of the system that destroyed it. Outside, another transformer roared to life. More lights flickered on across the city. And somewhere far beyond the skyline, a helicopter appeared in the dark sky, watching. And suddenly I understood. The apocalypse wasn't an accident. It was a test, and the results were still being recorded. The tall man waited for my answer. The room was quiet except for the hum of generators beneath the floor. Tyler stood beside me, tense, eyes fixed on the guards. Outside, more survivors were entering the neighborhood, drawn in by the lights, drawn in by hope. I already knew the truth. Hope was the bait, and this place was the trap. But refusing the offer right now would only get us thrown outside the gate, straight into the raiders. So I did the only thing that made sense. I nodded. I'll help. Tyler turned toward me sharply. His eyes said exactly what he was thinking. Don't trust them. I didn't. But survival sometimes means stepping inside the lion's den. The tall man smiled for the first time.
Good choice.
He extended a hand.
Name's Carter.
I shook it. Daniel. Not my real name, but names were cheap now. Carter gestured toward the door.
Come on. I'll show you how things work here.
The neighborhood looked almost normal under electric lights. That was the disturbing part. Generators powered street lamps. Several houses had working appliances. One building even had a small medical station. But everything was controlled. Food distribution happened at specific hours. Water access was monitored. Guards patrolled every street. It wasn't a shelter. It was a managed colony. Carter explained the rules casually as we walked.
Everyone who arrives gets evaluated. People with useful skills stay. People without skills still stay.
He paused.
But they work.
And if they refuse? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I already knew what happened to people who refused. Tyler stayed close beside me, silent, watching everything. That kid noticed details most adults would miss, which is probably why he had survived this long. At one point, he whispered quietly.
They're scared.
Who? I asked.
The guards.
I looked around. They did look nervous, alert, watching the streets constantly. Not like people in control, more like people waiting for something. Later that night, Carter brought us inside a larger building. The inside looked like a command center. Maps covered the walls. Radios constantly crackled with updates.
Zone 3 stable. Zone 6 population increasing. Perimeter patrol complete.
Carter handed me a clipboard.
You'll start with supply logs tomorrow.
You track food inventory, water usage, medical stock.
And Tyler? I asked. Carter looked at him.
He can help maintenance.
Tyler didn't look happy. But again, better inside the lights than outside the gate. Around midnight, I stepped outside alone. The city looked completely different now. Large sections were glowing with electricity again. Streetlights, buildings, even traffic signals. But the rest of the city remained dark. The pattern was deliberate. Someone was lighting the city piece by piece, like a board game, moving pieces around.
Testing the actions.
That was when I heard the helicopter again. Low, circling, watching. I followed it with my eyes as it crossed the skyline. Then something strange caught my attention. A flashing red light on the roof of a nearby building. A communication tower. Active, which meant something important. The radios inside the command center weren't just receiving messages. They were part of a network, and every network had a hub. The next morning I began looking for it. Supply logs were the perfect excuse to move around the neighborhood. I checked storage buildings, generator rooms, guard posts. Eventually I found the building I was looking for. The basement door was heavily locked. 2 guards stood outside, more security than anywhere else. Which meant one thing. Something important was inside. That night Tyler found me on the roof of our assigned building.
I know what you're doing, he said quietly.
Yeah.
You're looking for the people in charge.
I didn't deny it.
Because Carter isn't the boss, Tyler continued. He's just another employee.
I nodded. Exactly. Tyler sat beside me.
I saw something today.
What? He pointed toward the basement building.
Big cables. Running underground.
To where? He pointed toward the glowing skyline.
The tower.
A tower. Of course. Cities always have communication towers. Control hubs. Data relays. If someone was running this operation, that's where they would be. But that tower was almost 2 miles away, through territory controlled by raiders and unknown patrols. Tyler looked at me.
You're thinking about going.
Maybe. He sighed.
I knew it.
3 days later we got our chance. A supply convoy arrived. Large trucks carrying fuel and equipment. During the unloading chaos, security around the basement weakened. Tyler slipped inside first. I followed. The basement was filled with equipment. Servers, radios, monitoring screens, and one massive map of the city. Every district was marked, colored, labeled, population numbers, resource estimates, risk ratings. It looked exactly like what it was. A live experiment. One of the monitors showed something even worse. A world map. Multiple blinking points. Dozens of them. Cities. Across different countries. All marked with the same symbol. A white triangle. My stomach dropped.
This isn't just here, Tyler whispered.
No, it wasn't. This was happening everywhere. Footsteps suddenly echoed from the stairwell. Voices. Guards. We ducked behind equipment. 2 men entered the room. One spoke into a radio.
Control tower, this is Zone 4. Population intake successful.
A voice answered through the speaker.
Good. Continue Phase 2.
What's Phase 2?
The guard asked. There was a brief pause. Then the voice replied calmly.
Reduction.
My blood ran cold. Reduction. That meant the experiment wasn't about stabilizing survivors. It was about shrinking them. Tyler looked at me, eyes wide.
They're going to start killing people.
Yeah, but something else worried me more. The voice on the radio. It didn't sound human. It sounded too perfect, too calm, like it wasn't a person at all. When the guards finally left, Tyler whispered the question already forming in my mind.
Who's actually running this?
I looked again at the world map. The blinking cities, the controlled zones, the organized collapse. Then I remembered something Carter said. Orders came through the radios. No one here knew who was giving them. And suddenly the answer felt obvious. Maybe there wasn't a who. Maybe there was only a what. We slipped out of the basement quietly, back into the night. The city lights glowed across the skyline. Beautiful, controlled, artificial. Tyler looked up at the helicopter passing overhead again.
You think people are watching this?
I I shook my head slowly. No.
Then who?
I stared at the tower in the distance, at the blinking antennas, at the machines silently running the end of the world. Then I said the one thought I couldn't shake anymore. Maybe the people who started the apocalypse aren't people at all. Tyler swallowed.
So, what do we do now?
I looked toward the tower again, toward the heart of whatever system was running this experiment. And for the first time since the blackout began, I had a real target. We shut it down, but as the helicopter circled above us again, a red light blinked on its underside, scanning the streets, scanning the buildings, scanning us. And suddenly I had a terrible feeling. The system already knew we were here. And if it did, then the next phase of the experiment had probably just begun. Maybe the people who started the apocalypse aren't people. Maybe something else is running the experiment. And tonight, Tyler and I are going to find the tower controlling the entire city. If we survive long enough, I'll tell you what we find inside.